Hello again, and welcome back to the Total Survey Design Podcast. My name is Dr. Azdren Coma, and this is the second part of my two-part series on multilingual surveys. In this episode, I sit down with Dr. Rubén Ángel Arias Rueda. He's a project manager and lead researcher at Washington State University's Social and Economic Sciences Research Center. Dr. Arias Rueda specializes in mixed methods equity research, bilingual data collection, and community-engaged fieldwork. He has led statewide studies for Washington state agencies on topics like opportunity gaps for Hispanic and Latino students, as well as conditions in agricultural labor. In our conversation, Rubén explains the main goals he keeps in mind when designing surveys that need to work well in both English and Spanish. We also tackle a question a lot of researchers quietly wonder about. Is it really enough to just run your survey through Google Translate or an AI tool? And does back translating into English actually catch the problems you'd hope it would? He then shares real-world examples of the challenges that come up when creating and running multilingual surveys, what you need to think about when combining data from different language versions, and his practical advice for anyone doing this kind of fieldwork. Here's my conversation with Rubén.
Okay, so my name is... Oh, sorry.
Sorry. All right. Tell me.
Okay, my name is Rubén Arias. I'm a PhD in comparative literature, and I'm working as a project manager here at the Social and Economic Sciences Research Center in Pullman for Washington State University. And I'm here working since 2024.
So just going down the first few questions that I had, and I added a couple, and you could answer them or you could skip them however you want. You're 100% in control.
Okay.
Yeah. So what is the main goal that you have in mind when designing a survey that is both in English and in Spanish?
Yeah, for me, when we are designing surveys, I need to consider also if I'm just translating a survey that other colleagues are creating, or that I'm designing to have in both languages. The second version for me is easier because I'm going to design first in Spanish, and then I will work with other coworkers to see if that responds what I want. But it's more the classical work here is in the first direction. Other project managers, they have a survey they need by contract to have in Spanish, so then I work with them to translate them. And in those cases, it's always, for me, a hands-on process that is also most of the times done under very rigorous deadlines that we have. And I'm going to quote Borges, that he was also quoting Alfonso Reyes on that regard, that for me, and this applies to a text, and this applies to a translation, like definitive text, they don't exist. And they belong only to the religion or to fatigue. That's the quote. But I will add also that in our cases, the definitive text will belong to deadlines. That is what is what is moving our work. And that mindset for me, I think, is very important, because the goal when I have a real translation is not perfection. It's more clarity and accuracy. And I can explain these two concepts because I was spinning around them. Maybe they are intuitive, but when you have the survey there, you need to apply. You need to have, some kind of directions to apply that. And clarity for me means that the question needs to be very easy to understand and free of any ambiguity. So at any cost, I'm going to avoid, when I'm translating, any potential confusion due to double meanings that are very common, more than we think, ironies, wordplays, tongue twisters, extremely long explanation that can happen when you are translating and you don't have exactly the term and you need to rephrase. That can be very dangerous. This is in terms of clarity. That's one of the goals. And accuracy is, I would say, is even more critical. And I think I'm going to take here a maybe polemic or heterodox position in the translation world, because accuracy is not just in this field about saying exactly being faithful and exact to the original English wording. For me, it's more important staying faithful to the data that we are trying to capture. And the goal is not simply to ask the same question in two languages. It's for me to ensure that in both languages, in both versions, we are pointing to the same data, to the same underlying data. And this is maybe polemic because it raises probably the big question of the translation world. That is, can you truly capture exactly the same data that you need with two different questions?
Like I was going to say, I don't have a lot of experience in conducting surveys in more than one language. I've maybe worked on 3 different surveys like that. But so then my question is, what about doing something like, double checking the translation by back translating? I don't speak Spanish, right? I know maybe a handful of words, but if I was going to translate a survey into Spanish, I would be like, okay, I'm going to translate it to Spanish with Google Translate and then translate it back into English to see if it actually makes sense. So tell me, does that approach make sense, or why is that not enough, or is that enough? Or
Oh yeah, there are different layers in your question. One is about the tools that we are going to use, and the other one is if this kind of protocol of back translating is useful. I'm going to begin with the second one, with the back translation. For me, it's very useful, but it's also very tricky. Is useful because it's going to give you like a starting point, so it's very good to do it. Most of the time with simple questions, it's very useful to see, okay, I'm in the standard. But also, because I did this experiment with questions that can be more difficult or more wordy, since one word is always leading to another one, you can easily end up with a whole field of synonyms rather than a clear final validation. That's why for me, it's very helpful to identify alternatives, and that's why the back translation is providing most of the time. But I wouldn't use as okay, this is going to be my rubric to know if I'm doing this correctly. No, it's more like, okay, let's have a set, of a range of possible ways to say this. It's more effective in that, because many times you are translating in one way, and then you discover with this back translation that there are other ways to say it more efficient. So this about the translation. Then you were mentioning about Google Translator, and I will include Google Translator into the big field of AI. And in those cases, I think I have like a deeper, or I put more thoughts on those questions, because I think is what we live now, and everybody is using those resources. So for me, the main difference, I think this in a very conceptual way, that is Google Translate or AI systems, they operate uniquely at the level of the syntax and statistical patterns. So you have syntax and statistics. So what they are not going to capture is context, meaning, and real world experience. These 3 things that are super important in our field, they are not going to capture because they don't have an experience, or I'm going to be harsher. They don't know what a table or an apple is in an embodied or cultural sense. They just process language patterns at the syntax level. It means table and apple. For them, they are going to mean whatever is surrounded in the syntax level. So they appear mostly table and restaurant. They appear very close. They are correlated with those things. But the experience of a table is something that is beyond what we can ask. So because of these things, of this level in which they are operating, I can say that in many cases they can miss, and they miss already, the semantic and the pragmatic level, the context that is so important for you. So while those tools are super helpful, at the same level as the back translation, they cannot replace the human final judgment or liability. Absolutely not.
do you have any examples of challenges that you've faced, like actual, like practical examples that of designing or administering a multilingual survey?
Oh yes, there are in different ways. The most evident is the vocabulary. For example, with name of a species, it can be apples, food that is extremely variable in the same language, that from one region to another in the same country, we call the same fish differently. For those things, it's a mess, and it's very difficult, and you always need to know, okay, what is going to be mostly the variety of the language of your target population, this first, because if not, it's going to give you terms that you will need to decide, and it's not going to be so easy. This is one of the things. Second, when you are playing a lot with index terms, it means everything that is spatial or time related, like tomorrow, yesterday, those things, this is something that AI, they don't have. And that's why they crash many times when you want to point out some dates with those things, because for them, they don't exist the here and there. That doesn't mean anything for an AI, because you need a body to have that. There is not a body that embodies those things. So when you use index here, there, yesterday, tomorrow, they can be lost for things that for us are extremely obvious to use. So in those levels, they are extremely, they can be extremely vague sometimes and miss the point that you are trying to do, that is simple. I will need to go like further if you want like real examples about, okay, this variety of pears, for example, that I remember, this is a real example. There is a variety of pear very common here in Washington that is called Bos. But in Spanish, there are many ways to say that. And one of them is cola de rata, that means tail rat or tail of a rat. Because when you cut it, the pear, it looks like a, no, longitudinal, it looks like is from here. And it's something that I only hear here to the mostly Mexican-American population that live here in Washington, and they do those things. AI is not prepared to translate this word because they don't have the experience of these local people that are coming from Mexico most of the time, but they are also into the fields picking pears and apples. It's very difficult to capture these nuances. So yeah.
That's something I hadn't thought about before. But another thing that I really wanted to ask you about is, do you have experience like combining data that was captured in different languages, in English and in Spanish? If you're combining the data like way after you've collected all the data, would you combine those in the same variable, or do you label them, or how do you approach that process? Just on a very practical level.
If you have the same survey and you have the same instrument with the same questions, when you launch this, for example, in the web, you combine, because you are already making sure before launching the survey that the data that you are trying to capture is the same. So question A, doesn't matter what's the translation, the option 1 is going to be the option 1 for both. So in those cases, you merge directly. There is no difference on that. The differences are coming when you have open-ended questions, or it's more like a loose conversation or something that is more vague, and you want to just to be like inspirational to capture any other data that your instrument it was not prepared for. In those cases, to have the two languages, we don't merge until the end, and it depends on the project. But in the project that I was working, if the respondents they were responding in Spanish, I code in Spanish, precisely to be aware or more aware about possible silent themes that they were not prepared, like in a final coding, and only at the end I translate it. But you can do this before. It depends on if it's very qualitative oriented, I will translate until the end, and is what we do normally. If not, if it's just an open final ended comment, you can translate it before and then do like a more broad, wide coding.
Interesting.
No, it is.
So yeah, and I have my last question, and then we could talk, or however.
Mhm.
So, is there any other advice that you have for those designing multilingual surveys?
Yeah, I don't have advices for anybody, but I have advices for me because I don't know if it can apply so widely and so broadly. But for me, first thing when I have something to review or to set a translation, the first one is think about the tone first. Set the tone first. Decide very early whether the survey is going to be very formal, or is it formal or not? Is informal, more bureaucratic, more conversational, and also define the limits of that tone. If it's going to be very strict all the time, or depending on the questions, is going to fluctuate a little bit more. The tone is crucial because when you are, mostly I'm thinking about something that is going to be in the web, paper, and probably phoning, you need to consider the changes between the modes too. And when you have at the end a phoning or a phoning survey, a phoning version of that survey, I will almost go backwards with that one because that's the most difficult one to to make it consistently, and that's the one that needs the tone very very clearly to not mismatch the responders or not to confuse. If you need to sound official and bureaucratic, that's the way to go. If you need to be familiar and chit-chatting, same thing. So yeah, and other things that I always think is that as with the example of the pair that I was putting before, that your Spanish, I don't know with Albanese, but with your Spanish, there is no one single Spanish. And it's always very useful to have a Pan-Hispanic dictionary as a reference for that, and also use a different references for the Spanish. The Real Academy is the one to go, but there are others that are super useful, like Maria Moliner, that are the ones that I love the most because they tell you not only meanings, but also where they been used for a long time. So that's also super, super important.
What's the name of that dictionary?
Maria Moliner she
Ah,
was yes, she built the full first version of a dictionary of usage. That was the first one in Spanish. And since then, the other lexicographic scholars are being following that because I think it was from the 50s, 60s of the 20th century. I don't remember exactly now, but yeah, since then, the dictionary is expanding because, of course, a dictionary is always uh,
yeah.
uh, a very alive beast. And the other thing that I always think is that, and I put in practice, is talk and check and double check with native speakers on both sides of the translations. Because I'm a native speaker of one of them,
Yeah.
but only of one variety of that language too. So yeah, those changes are extremely important. So yeah, those
Interesting.
are the things that I tell to myself. Okay, consider this. Ask ask other interviewers how they will say this, and yeah, it's always like a tweaking process to fine tune.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna give you the floor. Is there anything else that you would like to share that maybe I didn't ask you or that we haven't talked about in this conversation about administering multilingual surveys?
Um, I think that you cover for me the main topics, the main questions. I would just add like a more personal feeling, uh, not question, but comment, that it will be how sensitive is to translate things. And many times when I was talking about the tone, the perception of what is in front of you, it can shift so much just with changing the tone. And the tone many times is how you are going to introduce the question. What's the first word that you are going to pronounce? I'm not, then when you are phoning, the tone is also the tone of your voice. But before that, the order of the words, it can really do incredible things. I was thinking, see, before we were chatting, I was thinking about examples of that, and I was thinking, okay, something very ridiculous, something very silly, but how many in how many ways can you ask about how old is someone? No? How old are you? And I was thinking, you can really expand this very in a very silly way, but for how long have you been alive? Are you gonna capture the thing that is gonna be, because with this second one, probably there will be people that will tell you that they are eternal, no? Depending on the idea of the alive that they have, right? But also it can be interpreted as something very fun. Those things are extremely vast and fascinating for me. So when and these things, they are also plays that I practice when I'm having the questionnaire for the first time. Like, okay, what will be the craziest way to ask this? And then we are gonna be carrying back to something more normal. So yeah, that was what I was thinking.
Yes. I mean, I realize for this conversation, I still have plenty to learn from multilingual surveys about it. But I hope this conversation is a good, I'll say, introduction to the topic to anybody who might be interested or curious about the issue. If somebody wants to reach out to you, is there a place that they could reach you?
I'm very easy to reach out in the web page of the SESRC. My contact is there. I'm Rubén Ángel Arias Rueda. So yeah, if someone has a question, I will be more than happy to take it.
Okay, so just
absolutely.
Well, Ruben, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. This has been a pleasure. I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while, so I'm glad we finally got around to it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. It was so nice to talk with you again. Absolutely.
Thank you. That was my conversation with Dr. Rubén Ángel Arias Rueda. If you'd like to reach out to Rubén, you can do so by visiting sesrc.wsu.edu. This will be the last episode of the third season of the podcast. I'm beginning a new job at an amazing organization, which means I'll soon be moving across the country to a big city. The exciting part for me is that I'll be doing exactly the kind of work that I want to do, working as a survey methodologist, refining existing surveys, and developing new techniques to collect better data. So I want to take some time to get settled into the new job and the new city before returning to this podcast. In the meantime, I'll be taking notes on episode ideas. I'll look through the podcast feedback survey, where many of you have left great suggestions for future episodes. And I'll plan on bringing another set of interesting, evergreen episodes to all of you, hopefully not too far in the future. If you'd like to write to me, you can do so at totalsurveydesign@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.